Welcome back to another week of Summer Tips from She. This week I'm with my wonderful friend Megan.
Hi.
And she's going to show us something really cool in her kitchen this morning, something that I think every woman loves. And also, for those of you who don't know, Megan serves as a moderator coordinator for our AM session.
That's right.
At She Ministries. So Megan, what are you going to be showing us this morning?
This morning I'm going to show you how to make chocolate turtles.
Sounds wonderful.
Ooh, they're so good.
Great.
The three main ingredients are going to be pecans, homemade caramel, and then the chocolate. The caramel is very hot but cools very quickly. So when I start my turtles, I use 3 cookie sheets and 3 pounds of pecans. You can use whole pecans, halved pecans or even chopped pecans. And this morning I'm just going to use chopped pecans. And it's about a pound per cookie sheet. Definitely easier if you use ones with the side edges. But I only have 2, so I always have to fake it on the last one. So I pour my pecans on the pan, and I'm trying to kind of smooth it out to a thin layer of pecans. Okay, so now we're going to make the caramel from scratch. So 2 sticks of butter, and we're going to heat this over medium heat just to melt it. Once the butter is melted, we'll add brown sugar, a can of sweetened condensed milk, and we'll add some corn syrup. When I'm making the caramel, I use just a silicone spatula because it's heat resistant and it works perfect for kind of keeping it off the sides. You're going to need a candy thermometer. There is a shop called The Specialty Shop, and it's a chocolate candy making, cake making shop. And it's where I buy my chocolate, but they also sell them there. The reason you need a candy thermometer is because we're going to cook the caramel to what's called soft ball heat, and so for us here it's going to be 220 degrees. Meanwhile, I'm melting this butter, and we're going to need to add 2 1/4 cups brown sugar. I usually go ahead and put it in when my butter is mostly melted. When I make the turtle recipe, this will end up being about 100 to 120 turtles, which is great. One of the things I love about making turtles is actually that it makes so many, because then you have them on hand for gifts or sharing with your family. I used them last year at the end of Bible study and was able to just treat the ladies. I sell real estate, and so I use them a lot of times as closing gifts. At Christmas, I actually sold them in the Arts and Crafts Fair for Calvary. I'll tell you, when I started making the turtles, I actually used to buy the caramel and I would just melt it down and make them. And I was looking at my very trusted Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, and there's a recipe for homemade caramel, and so we decided to try making the caramel from scratch. And I think hands down it makes them the best. So even though this is an extra step, it's much more affordable to make the caramel from scratch, and also it is much tastier. So now we're going to add a can of sweetened condensed milk. You will find with me that I think the generic is as good as the name brand. And we're just going to add all of this in while heating it. And once we get the butter melted and the ingredients in, I actually turn it up to medium-high heat. And I'm going to do that until it boils. And we're actually going for a pretty rapid boil. And we're going to stir this constantly. If you've ever worked with sugar of any kind, it burns really easily. So you have to stir the caramel the whole time. So be ready, because it takes about 20 minutes of stirring, but it is so worth it in the end. So we're going to need a cup of corn syrup. I'm going to just do a cup of corn syrup, and we'll add that right in. You really do want to try to get as much of the corn syrup out, because it really clings to the cup and you'll short yourself, and it'll help. The corn syrup actually helps firm the caramel into kind of a gooey texture. So we need all of that corn syrup. We have all the ingredients in. I'm going to go ahead and turn it up to medium-high heat, and again, I'm just going to stir the whole time so that my sugar doesn't burn to the bottom of the pan. Now, one of the things I like to do, and my mom and I usually do this at Christmas time when we're trying to make a lot of them, is I will double the recipe, and we will make, 200, 250 at one time. You'll just need a larger pan, of course, to do it, and then it's 2 cans of the sweetened condensed milk. It's double the corn syrup, so it's a full bottle of corn syrup. It's a full package of brown sugar. It's 4 sticks of butter, and so it's really easy to double the recipe. But very hard to do it on your own. If you ever want to double the recipe, you're going to need to have 2 people, because once the caramel is complete, you have to spoon it onto the pecans, and you have to work very quickly because as the caramel cools back down, it thickens and it's hard to spoon it over the pecans. So Nicole, now it's boiling, and you'll see it's going to be a nice rapid boil from here until we get to that 220 degrees. The candy thermometer has a clip on the side, and so you're clipping it on the side of the pan. You want to push it down deep into the caramel without it resting on the bottom of the pan. I usually use my spatula to kind of make sure I can get underneath it, because the bottom heat of the pan, of course, would give you a misreading on your thermometer. I'm going to just leave that thermometer in there until I reach my 220 degrees. When you're looking at your thermometer, you always want to go down to eye level so that you can see evenly, and right now I'm only at 170 degrees, so I've got a ways to go. Okay, Nicole, I am right at about 220 degrees, and so what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn my stove off, and when I set my pecans up, I get out my trivet, so you could just use a pot holder, something to set on your countertop, because of course it's very, very hot. What I'm going to do is go ahead and get my candy thermometer out of the way, and the last ingredient that we're going to add to the caramel is vanilla, and it takes 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So now I just stir my vanilla in there, and then I'm going to quickly, as fast as I can, spoon the caramel onto the pecans. And you can sort of gauge if you want big turtles or small turtles. And I always have an extra spoon out, because at the end it won't run off the spoon very well, and I'll have to use a spoon to sort of get it off. But I start at one end of my pan, and I am just going to spoon the caramel in little circles. And these are going to be my turtles at the end. I'll just pop them right off of the cookie sheets, and it will make nice little round turtles that we're going to dip in chocolate. When I'm spooning the caramel, I scoop it, and then I use the side of my pan a lot to just wipe off the excess, so I don't just have a huge mess of caramel all over my pan. You'll notice when you're doing the caramel that at first, because it's very hot, that it runs off really easily, and so I try to move really fast at the beginning and just do lines of them, because I find it easier to kind of make them the same size. You're just going to use regular cookie sheets. I don't butter them. It's completely ungreased. I don't line it, because if you line it with anything, the caramel will stick to it. But on the cookie sheets, the caramel will just pop right off the bottom. So Nicole, usually when I get toward the end, I'll just flip my pan around. And I notice now, like, my caramel's starting to thicken up a little bit. And so it's going to start getting slower here. So I've got to keep moving. You want the caramel to get hard for dipping it in the chocolate. So I actually will take my pecans with the caramel on them, and I'll put them in the refrigerator. And if I'm really thinking ahead, I will do the caramel and the pecans the night before, and I will go ahead and put them in the refrigerator overnight. And then the caramel gets hard, and it makes them really easy to dip in the chocolate. When they set up to room temperature, the caramel will soften back up. It just makes them easier to dip in the chocolate. But if you don't have the ability to do it overnight, it's probably going to take about 2 hours in the refrigerator for the caramel to firm up. And now I'll just hold my pan and spoon it on there. Now, what I'll do is take these and put them in the refrigerator, and then we'll come back to them and we'll dip them in chocolate. Here's the chocolate. Now, They sell this chocolate in much smaller bags. Obviously, the more you buy, the cheaper or less expensive it will be. Again, I mentioned the store called the Specialty Shop. You can buy dipping chocolate or melting chocolate at Walmart or Albertsons, but this is the best tasting and it's made very specifically for this. This brand is called Merkin's Cocoa Light Chocolate. I'm going to put a little bit of chocolate in here to start. It's actually easier to melt the chocolate if you just get a little of it hot first. So my first batch I'm going to put in the microwave and I'm going to do it for about 1 minute. And with chocolate, a lot like sugar, you have to be careful that it doesn't burn. So you do a minute and we're going to stir and then we're going to do it in about 20 to 30 second intervals after that. I'm just going to use a fork because when I dip my turtles, a fork works perfect because the excess chocolate can run through the little prongs of the fork. What I've done is gotten out some of the hard or cold turtles out of the refrigerator, and you're just going to need basic wax paper. I try to think about the size of a cookie sheet because after I dip them, I'm going to put them back on a cookie sheet. And the reason I do that is so that I don't just have to leave them here all on my counter, but I can put it on a cookie sheet and maybe go set it like on my washing machine at the end or somewhere out of the way. After a minute, you'll see the chocolate isn't really melted, but it's beginning to melt, and you want to stir it, keeping in mind your glass is getting hotter, and you'll be tempted to want to go, oh, I can do it 2 minutes, but what will happen is you'll end up burning the chocolate. So do a minute and stir it. I usually do 30 seconds after that, and I'm just going to keep doing it and stirring it. So now, Nicole, this first part of the chocolate is melted, but I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more, and the warm chocolate will melt the other chocolate. So I'm just going to mix that chocolate in here, and then I'll do maybe one more 30-second interval. It should be ready to dip turtles. So while that last little bit of chocolate is warming, what I'm going to do is take another fork, and I just put it right underneath the caramel, and I can just pop them right off. And you'll find that if the caramel isn't cold, then it's gooey and you're kind of stringing it off of the cookie sheets. And you do want the chocolate to be a little bit warm. That way the excess chocolate will run off the turtles. You're just going to take the turtle and just drop it right in the chocolate. And you want to think about the pecan side down and the caramel side up, so that the top of your turtles are really pretty. I'm just going to wipe that excess chocolate right off the bottom of the fork. One thing you'll notice on these turtles, they don't look a ton like a turtle. These ones are smaller and a little more round. If you use the big halved pecans, they're chunkier and they look a little bit more like a turtle. I like the chopped pecans because I think since they're a little rounder and more uniform, they fit in a box better for giving as gifts. So now I'm just going to do this all the way through. This is what I actually did at the Arts and Crafts Fair. I just had spools of ribbon and various boxes, and people kind of picked what they wanted. And this would make a wonderful teacher gift, a gift for a boss, a colleague, just wonderful ideas. It's a very inexpensive and very personable way to make gifts. I think you have to try one, Nicole.
Well, I am excited to try one. Amazing.
Yay!
They're delicious. Like Megan said, they're just such great gifts. I mean, who really doesn't want to receive any kind of candy for any kind of gift?
Absolutely.
For somebody to know that you invested all this time in them, I think that's just a gift in and of itself.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'm a firm believer, if you know me at all, that everything should be homemade.
wow.
Birthday cakes are homemade and brownies are homemade, and so even turtles can be homemade.
Well, I need to start hanging out here more. Thank you again, Megan. I really appreciate you showing this to all of us. And try it at home out there. Let us know how you like this recipe.
Yes.
I'd love to hear how you enjoy these wonderful turtles. And thank you for joining us for another week of Summer Tips from She. We look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you guys.
Thank you.